Welcome to the LiftKit Marketing Podcast, where we celebrate the people behind the campaigns, the tech, and the hustle of modern marketing. I'm your host, John Hoeft, founder of LiftKit Marketing, and I'm joined by my co-host, Danielle Schermerhorn from Atelier Commerce. Here's a question for you. What would it take for you to leave your comfortable, high-level role at a Fortune 500 company to go help build something from the ground up? In this episode, we're talking with Carter Jensen, the former global commerce and senior manager of enterprise marketing at General Mills. He walked away from a corporate, stable job to dive headfirst into the fast-moving world of AI startups. We explore what it means to bet on your zone of genius, how to rethink your relationship with AI, and why adopting a founder's mindset might be the key to unlocking your next chapter. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the LiftKit Marketing Podcast. Hey, Danielle. How you doing today?
Crazy. I'm in e-commerce, so we're focused on Black Friday. My head is in a million different places right now, but at the same time, we're working on our strategy planning for our business, and it's fun to also see other clients actually coming into the pipeline. How about for you? What's new? What's coming up?
There was this completely virtual event called Guru Conference, and the Guru Conference is 100% about email marketing. And the people behind it are email gurus, but there's everybody from all these different agencies, HubSpot, so on. But the most unique thing about this is that it's a worldwide event. It's 28,000 people on this webinar, and it was all day yesterday, and it's going on right now. And there's everything from like DJs to celebrity appearances to Nicole Kidman as the keynote, Flavor Flav doing a Guinness Book of World Record for the number of people playing air guitar on a webinar, to which I happened to be on. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. But the most interesting thing about it was just the platform. I'm going to have to find out what platform they used to do it, because it was so easy to navigate, to sign up for, to go from session to session, to network in different groups, go to the main stage, just a really well done event. I remember going to those types of things a year or two ago, and they were just super awkward and clunky and just didn't really feel like they knew what they were doing. But this is just done really well. They've got to be maybe 2-3 years into it, but really enjoyed it. So,
Awesome.
and so those were some highlights from this week, just getting out, meeting with people. And then it was actually a really good, just general work week in terms of like some of the things at the bottom of the pipeline, finally closing, stuff like that, which is always fun.
I think things are moving in the right direction. And I just want to, do a side note here that you were not paid to say anything positive about this webinar, right? That was just all unsolicited. So.
Yeah, no, we don't have any sponsors yet. So anybody that's getting a plug right now, it's very organic.
Texas has really shaken everything up, and we'll see if other states follow suit. But things are becoming very hairy in email marketing right now. So Texas passed a law that email and SMS qualifies telemarketing. And so in order to actually email or send a text message to somebody in Texas, just like in Texas, you have to pay a $10,000 bond and a $200 fee, have a $10,000 bond, and fill out some paperwork. And then wait like 6 weeks to get approval. So we have clients who are going through the process, but there's a lot of legal ambiguity right now that is being fought in court. So we'll see what happens. But
yeah, let's talk more about that. Does that mean I have to go through my CRM and basically remove everybody in Texas?
Yeah,
So
except how do you know somebody? My phone number is not the area code in the state that I live in. So how would you know if I'm in Texas or not? That's the thing.
Right.
That's the part where.
Interesting.
And also, if you're opting in, then aren't you saying, yes, I do want this solicitation? Those questions haven't been answered.
Cool. Well, let's get into it. I'm super excited about our guest today. It's one of the more highly anticipated ones. I knew from the minute I met him that we were going to get him on this show, because I was just really excited about his background and more excited about what he's doing right now. So I'm just going to read a quick little intro that I whipped together leading up to this. So our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Carter Jensen, who's one of those rare marketers who's mastered both sides of the table, meaning corporate giant and then agile startup. So after several years of leading enterprise digital transformation at General Mills. That's where he was scaling all the direct to consumer channels, deploying global performance marketing systems, built up the foundation for their AI powered marketing. He did all that and then just decided he was going to leave the Fortune 500 world, go all in on AI and entrepreneurship. And today, Carter's with a company called The Uncommon Business. It's a startup that right now is absolutely crushing it by helping leaders architect AI native companies, not just teaching AI, but really help showing them how to rewire their entire business. And we're going to talk obviously more about that later. But on top of that, Carter's one of us. Carter's like, a dad to three boys. He's out there pioneering the future of work while he's navigating Legos and bedtime routines. He's also been recognized as 40 under 40 with the Path to Performance, the P2PI group. He's an AIR leader, which I don't know what that is, but I want to find out. He's one of the sharpest minds I know when it comes to building what's next. So let's dive into it. Carter, welcome to the LiftKit Marketing Podcast.
Well, thanks, John, for that incredibly kind intro. I don't think I've had an intro that covers so many sides of my life. I feel absolutely honored. So thank you to you and Danielle for having me here today.
You're welcome.
Was there anything wrong?
No, it was absolutely
right?
Spot on. Yeah,
Sweet.
It was great.
All
Thanks,
right.
John.
You bet. Absolutely. So I hinted at it in terms of this email marketing thing. I don't know if you have any point of view on that or what you've heard lately.
I haven't heard of the Texas, legislation that's come down the pipeline. I think in my corporate days, obviously, that was a really heavy burden on the email teams of ensuring that every single T is ticked, I is dotted, the whole thing. And I know that the state rights often got not in the way, but you have to always be compliant to the highest quality standards. That was when the California laws came into play. And now with these Texas laws, you brought this up in the intro. You can't just assume where people are. Danielle, you have a different area code on your phone number. Not always do we have location data associated with emails. And so to be truly compliant, you have to adhere to the strictest policies that you have within your CRM or within your list. And so I could imagine as that comes through the pipeline, it's going to be a nightmare for many email marketing teams.
Well, let us know because, in fact, what I'm seeing is a lot of hush hush on it. It's like if you don't know, then, like maybe you're not breaking anything, but that's not how the law works. So we'll see what happens.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse kind of thing.
So we will see, but it seems like, again, there's just a lot of ambiguity on who you could, if somebody is opting in, that's why we're asking them to subscribe and opt in. So if you're doing that, then can't you email somebody? Well, I think there's a lot of questions. I did attend a webinar through Attentive, and they had a lawyer, and a lot of he would say facts, but then say, I can't give you advice on this, of course.
Very lawyery statement.
Right. So everybody really needs to go consult counsel, and then that becomes really burdensome for small to medium-sized businesses. And that's the thing that's really frustrating is doesn't really feel pro small business at this point. So, but I mentioned, Carter, this podcast, we go through your journey and stuff, and you mentioned that you have some counsel background. Is that right? What did you go to school for? And let's start at the beginning of your journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I was the most stereotypical Minnesota kid, grew up here in the cities and then went to the University of Minnesota back in the day. And I always had an inkling for entrepreneurship. I always had an inkling towards marketing and really kind of, can thank some high school teachers specifically for really kind of implanting that in me. I think we can all go back to, a few really key teachers in our early days that really formed who we are today. And I think probably the most under-recognized profession in our world are those teachers that really form us to who we are. But then, leaving the University of Minnesota, did a couple weird and wild things, but landed at a couple different Minnesota agencies, did the standard kind of run through Minnesota agencies, the big list, as you can imagine, changing jobs out every 18 months. And then in 2020 landed at my career in Fortune 500, which is at General Mills. And so obviously that was an interesting inflection point in 2020, getting hired from my basement. But it was an incredible opportunity that I was able to get and really enjoyed my time when I was there.
Cool. I want to go back to the weird and wild stuff because
Yeah,
sometimes those
I
are
do.
the things that really shape who you are, Carter.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I lived 12 different lives in my early 20s, which I'm super thankful for all of them. Yeah, I actually worked full time at Periscope during college, which was a really interesting and awesome opportunity. Probably worked a little too much for a college kid, as I will probably reflect on those early years. But I actually worked on a program that was servicing Target at the time called Target Back to College. And as I describe this, you'll realize how much of a dream job it was. But basically, what we did is we traveled the country every fall and through events at major Target locations across the country. We would bus thousands of students to Target stores after hours, so between usually 11 and 1 in the morning, and we'd have an incredible shopping event for them with deals and music and the whole 9 yards. And
I
so
did
that
that.
was, you did that.
I
What
attended
school did you go to?
the University of Minnesota is where
Yeah.
I attended
Yes.
that. I
So that's
totally
where it was
remember
born.
that.
Yeah, exactly. See, and that means marketing did its job. It was one of the most like incredible marketing experiences ever because you got new students who were looking for their kind of first purchase. Like all of a sudden they were on the hook for buying, stuff for their dorm room and where do you get food and how do I get new office or school supplies, whatever it might be. And Target was incredible at creating that memorable first experience. You knew exactly where you had to go for your next 4 years. So.
Yeah, and getting to a Target was so scary in it of itself, of like, how am I going to get on a public bus and go? And so it solved a lot of issues. And then also you had just moved into your dorm, knew that you were missing some things. And so I do remember that. That's so crazy. You may have been behind that because I think that actually we went to the University of Minnesota maybe at the same time,
Okay.
but that was like a very memorable experience. So that's so cool.
But that was one of the first kind of events that was super successful. And then we deployed that to, oh man, I think it was 70 or 80 different universities all in tandem. So I was super lucky to be a part of that work and was able to really kind of champion that at a super young age through college, which was, as you could imagine, a ton of fun.
Amazing. Well, yeah, that sounds like, John, thank you for bringing us back to this moment because that is a cool job. It sounds like a dream job. You were working very hard. And why did you want to leave that?
Great question. Well, things get a little weirder as one day I was standing in the Chipotle line with my best friend and he told me, "You're quitting your job and we're going to move to Australia." And I said, "No." And then if you know who he is, he wouldn't allow the no answer. And so 6 months later, we all turned in our 2-week notice and got in an airplane. And I became a line chef at a burger restaurant in Melbourne, Australia. So we all ditched the ship, I guess, as I say, and took a chance on something different. So like I said, it keeps getting weirder.
What did your family think of that when you're like, hey, I have this really great gig lined up. We're doing Target's one of our biggest clients. I'm going to go flip burgers.
Well, that is one question. The other question, I was actually dating my now wife at the time. And so you should really ask what she thought of it. She was not a huge fan of this whole thing, but she did come and visit for a few weeks, which was a ton of fun. But, I think, at the time, so many marketers, your family's always kind of curious on what you actually do every day. So I think they were kind of oblivious to the whole thing and they thought it was a pretty great experience. I had gone to school there when I was a little younger. So they knew the area and they knew kind of what was going on. So yeah, we did that for half a year of, that was a wild adventure in itself, came back and then rejoined into the agency world.
Wow. So what agency did you join at that point?
So the agency roster is kind of vast, but I'm sure there's a lot of Minnesota marketers. So this will be kind of, some of these agencies don't even exist anymore. So the Target Back to College events were run by Periscope at the time, kind of in the heyday of that agency. I left, I came back, joined Space 150, then boomeranged back to Periscope for a little bit, went to Fallon, worked out of their New York office in Fallon for a while, and then ended up at a small agency called Latitude for my last couple of years before Mills.
Nice.
So a roster of Minnesota agencies there through and through.
Yeah, that's great. And I think just going back that getting away and traveling, obviously, I'm a huge fan, huge advocate. I think everybody, especially right out of college, whatever, you got to do that. It's just so hard to do any other time in your life. But you gain a lot of respect and perspective on the world when you do that.
100%.
But yeah, I agree. I think traveling, I always say that when I'm mentoring interns, and they're thinking about it, I go, yes, go now. Don't think twice, quit this job, go, because you will never get that opportunity again. especially once you do settle down, if you're in a relationship, and especially once you have kids.
Yeah, totally.
Everything becomes more complicated. And or you might find it, it's those experiences that I really do believe that shape you. So I would love to get back to you, Carter. So in the agency, these were all marketing agencies, and what were you doing where you were like, I like this part of marketing? There's so many different marketing hats that we talk about and
Totally.
disciplines. What were the things that you were finding you were attracted to?
Yeah, so I came into the marketing world obviously through that experience, the Target work, because I actually had a little bit of an interesting background in live events and production. I was kind of on the technical side of a lot of live events and technical side of that, and I knew that wasn't a career. I didn't want to spend my life, working nights and weekends, and it's pretty draining. And so I did a lot of research at that young age of like, how do I turn this gig work into a real career? And actually came across experiential marketing. That was kind of the big buzzword around that time where, brands were creating these live experiences for their target audience. And I still think to this day, it's one of the most effective forms of marketing when you do it correctly. And so that was really the birth of like me getting into agency, was through that event experience. And through that, I always was the more technical person on the team of event producers, because I had that technical background. I knew how to build, fix, program, tune, whatever was needed. And that really carried me into my role as I continued down like digital strategy. So I moved from event production into more core digital strategy, doing web builds, doing email marketing, doing all that through more traditional marketing agencies. And then of course that gets sprinkled in with some social strategy. And so you start getting really good at social. And then before you know it, you're kind of a full stack marketer because you kind of have experience. You've been forced into different fields just because you're the only one in the room who can often do it. And so I'm super thankful that I had that agency experience, because there's not a project that can really come across my desk until recently, right, that I hadn't had some sort of unique experience in. And so it proved to be really beneficial. Also uncomfortable at times, as you could imagine, walk into rooms where you don't truly know what's going on. But I think at that age, especially in the first couple of years of your career, kind of that first chapter, there's nothing better. There's nothing better than to get thrown to the wolves a few different times. There's nothing better than to do something you have no idea on. And in hindsight, there's nothing better than getting called out by a client to say that, the work you just produced wasn't actually anything close to what they needed, because those are some of the best learning moments ever. I'm like, all right, back to the drawing board. We're going to try it again. So as anyone who's listening, who's been in agency land, you know how that works, right? You know exactly, what's happening. And you know what? You ideally are just smart people that have really good creative juices flowing, and you do your best to get the job done. And I was just really lucky that I got to do that at such great agencies with such great clients through that tenure.
Yeah, we've had guests on here, and Danielle, I think you've been actually called out as being kind of one of those clients that could maybe be a little spicy sometimes.
Yes, I don't know what number that is, but you'll have to listen to the episode with Brooke Weller. Yeah, but she said she liked that. So, I'm going to
Yeah,
It's
stand.
good. It teaches us those important lessons that we just talked about.
exactly. Nobody, you don't want to get comfortable, no matter what side of the table you're on. And you always have to be pushing to the next thing, and
100%.
improving whatever you're building. Was there anyone in particular that, um, as a you don't have to name names or anything, but personality wise, anybody that, what did they do to help push you along, or was there anybody that you were discouraged by and you learned something from, and just it's kind of the people that help shape your career.
Yeah, like anyone kind of in their early career, you always have the people who really put you on a pedestal and was able to get you that next level. And you also have the dreaded stories of people who didn't believe in you. And I think, I had my fair share of both. I think some of the best opportunities that I had were when I worked for leaders who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, right? I remember very specific, one example, one leader, one client where, and this is kind of, and I may be weird, but I love this about agency land was, you get a little note and they come by your desk and they say, client's going to be here in an hour. I was going to present this, but now I want you to actually present it. Here's the deck, figure it out. And in the moment, that is terrifying, right? Especially as a younger marketer within the agency land, your big clients are coming in, you're running around trying to find a jacket to put on. It's one of those types of things. But I always loved that. I loved it because I knew I was going to learn a ton. I knew there was going to be an opportunity for me. And I always am so thankful to those leaders who saw something or saw an opportunity to put me in kind of the middle of it all to try to figure it out. Because again, those are the learning experiences that are so valuable. And I have stories like that come to my ears where, we're walking into an event, we don't know if it's going to work. We're walking into a boardroom, and we really don't know what's happening. Or you got to jump on a call and you got to present something that you're not quite sure is even right. And leaders who are able to enable that, and truly at the end of the day, they're believing in their staff, right? They're believing in the people that they hired. But I absolutely love when people are able to promote you in that way, in the right environment, because that is the learning experience that's so fun and so valuable, and things I clearly still remember to this day.
Well, there's some level of trust there because as a former agency owner, I would never give that task to someone if there was any risk of losing the client. Especially
Right. Yeah.
you would they must have trusted you and felt like now's the time to push you off of the diving board because that's the only way that you're going to swim. So
100%.
yeah, that's without, if they told you that, maybe you wouldn't have performed to that level. Like, hey, Carter,
Totally.
we really think you're going to be great at this. You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'll tell you this one other story too. One of the most unique, in contrast to the positive, and I think your listeners will get a kick out of this one. In advertising, especially, when you're in your early days, meeting with people is like one of the most important things you can do for your career. Like having your network of people, you're preached that all the way through college. And I always enjoyed it, right? I enjoyed reaching out to random executives at different agencies and just asking for coffee or whatever. And at a young age, you can kind of get away with it because it's a learning moment. You're not trying to get anything from them. Like you truly are sitting down to like learn from them. And I remember, and I will never name the name, but I remember asking a agency executive to coffee. I remember exactly who it was. It was at, well, I won't say it because they might know who they are. But I remember sitting down and, you kind of banter back and forth a little bit. And that was really awkward. Like they clearly didn't want to be there. And I guess for better or for worse, he finally said, he's like, so what do you want from me? And I was just so taken aback. And I guess like, thankfully, because of the other uncomfortable situations I was in, like was able to navigate that appropriately. And, I just said, hey, like, here's the deal. I'm 20 something years old. I'm new in my career. I look up to you as a leader. You were nice enough to take some time. Like, I truly want to learn from you. Like, I want to learn whatever. And unfortunately, it got worse from there. I will not detail out the stories, but when you do that so often, when you're put in those boardrooms, when you're taking those random coffees and you're meeting with people, there's inevitably going to be one or two that just fail, right? And now it's a story. We can talk about it on a podcast. And I think that, I'm probably better for that experience, but I think it's just a lesson to say like, yeah, you know what? You're going to crash and burn sometimes. You're going to meet people who aren't the nicest, kindest people in the world, but it's all part of the experience. And I think, I look back at the hundreds of different meetings I had and you know what? I wouldn't trade that for the world for one uncomfortable hour.
You're gaining that street knowledge.
Yeah,
You're able
exactly.
to pick up on personalities quick and figure out what route you're going to take with that
Totally.
individual. Or yeah, no, it's great. Big advocates of meeting in person, exploring ways to help each other out and lift each other up is kind of the mantra for us for sure.
Well, and John, that's
How
how
about
we got to know each other too. Random brewery morning, wherever we were, 4 or 5 people around a table and didn't know anyone. And here we are. So it
Yep,
all works out. It's all an
yeah,
investment that pays off tenfold.
absolutely.
I have been reached out to by people starting their career marketing and they're like, how can I get a job? There's so many people looking for jobs right now. Go network. I can't stress it enough. Of like, do what Carter did. Go ask people to, you have to buy their coffee, but like bring them out and go
It's the
do
best
these things.
$5 investment you're ever going to make.
Exactly.
Yep. No, yeah. So how about any success stories with a particular campaign, like a case study that you'd like to highlight?
Oh, yeah. The ones we already mentioned, they're like, the Target Back to College team was so formative for me. It really set the stage for so much, so many things. One of the things that, and we can get into some of the General Mills experience, I think is probably where some of the biggest wins happen. But I think, when I look at my agency days, one of the things I was really proud of, it was a very streamlined, we were working for Excel Energy at the time, power provider, utility provider, redoing websites, whatever it might be. I was working as a strategist at the time, and I was a 25-year-old kid who had no idea what the heck Excel Energy really actually did, right? I had no idea. And we were working on the economic development website. Who the heck is that, right? And what I loved was we were able to, and the clients gave us the bandwidth and the kind of budget, I guess, at the end of the day, to get on the phone with different departments, different economic development departments across the country. And I remember sitting in this conference room having phone call after phone call after phone call after phone call. And the first ones were like, so what do you do? Like, well, tell me more about what this is. But as the days draw on, like, I get it. Like, and to this day, I can still banter with anyone who like is in that industry. Cause I'm like, oh, how are those transmission lines doing? What's the new data center you're working on? Like, it's kind of fun because you get so dialed into this thing. And so what we're able to do is, we came in as 25-year-old kids who knew nothing, right? But because we applied that knowledge, we came out with the most incredible web experience that was so tailored directly to that clientele, to who they were serving, the customers who were actually visiting the site, highlighting the tools that they needed and creating a much more streamlined experience than they ever had before. And I use that as not the most flashy experience, right? But I think anyone who's listening as a marketer knows you're not working on stuff that you always love, right? You're not always working on the biggest, consumer brand out there. Not everything could be an Apple or a Nike, but there's still these awesome learning moments that come from it, and you can still deliver incredible products that have a huge impact at the end of the day. So I'll highlight that one. And though odd, I do think it is really important that we think about that, especially people who are in marketing today. And especially if you're a lower level, it's just associate level coming in, you're going to learn something from every single client. It's not just the ABIs of the world or targets of the world, but every single client has something they can give to you.
Yeah. And get 100% to all of those opportunities because you don't know what will come out of that.
Never know. If I ever need a job in transmission lines or data centers, I feel like I'm set. I'm good to go.
Yeah, there's something about the agency side, that benefit of working with so many different businesses and learning so many different businesses. And even when I would sell digital marketing solutions on behalf of a media company, now you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of small to medium-sized businesses where
For
you're
sure.
talking to these people and learning about their business. That's just a great learning ground. And then,
Yeah,
I mean, it
amazing.
just makes you that much more valuable later if you do want to get in-house or on the brand side as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That's, hearing your story makes a lot of sense. Love the background. And then you hit the big time. General Mills, Fortune 500. Here we go.
By the
So
skin of my
buckle up.
teeth.
Yeah.
What was
So
your title there? Like, what were you hired to do?
Yeah. So, I think it's an interesting story. I started looking for a job in the corporate world, not because of actually the pandemic, but the timing actually worked out. And I started my kind of job search. I knew I wanted to move into the brand side after 10 years in agency. And I started that hunt in January of 2020, right? And it's just, you kind of look around, you start activating your network, you start kind of, poking around. And of course, then 2020 comes along in the pandemic. And while we're on the networking field, we are also used to jumping on Riverside or Zoom now. It's like no big deal. But if you remember back then, we didn't have any of that. It wasn't like a normal thing to add a Zoom link to a calendar. And so for the General Mills side, I remember it was like a friend of a friend, right? Was what it was. And they're like, you should talk to them at General Mills. Like, and it was just a casual conversation. And I remember like having to ask for her cell phone number. I'm like, do I call you? Like, is that what we do now? And so my first couple informal coffees were literally cell phone chats as I was sitting in my house in the basement at the time, just talking to this random person and trying to get to know them, not face to face, not video to video, but literally on their cell phone, right? And it was just this really interesting, it sounds so, normal now, but that was a really interesting period. And to make it a little quicker here, one of my biggest mentors and someone I look up to this day was my hiring manager there. And she kind of was like, oh yeah, you should do marketing. You should do this. She's like, I have a few roles open on my team, but I don't think you'd be interested in them. And before she left, I'm like, what are those roles? And so I came in what was the global e-commerce team at General Mills during the pandemic. And I still to this day, she won't tell me, but I think I snuck in at the skin of my teeth. Like I really do think she gave me an opportunity that I don't know if she fully believed in at the moment. And, I hope it paid off for her. I believe it paid off in spades. But I came in as global e-commerce, and it wasn't until a couple years later I realized how incredible that role was. You imagine we were basically the e-commerce experts within an organization that was having to flip their portfolio of selling 6% online to 30% online almost overnight, right?
Wow.
And so we were the center of excellence that was there to support that transition. And there were only 5 of us. And we had to, I would have calls with, obviously our teams here in the States, but then, in the early mornings, we'd be on the phone with our European friends because they were looking at us saying like, what do we do? We were at 6%, they were at 2%, right? And we had to really just scramble to figure out, what were the most necessary things to do in order to keep that demand where it was, as no one was going into grocery stores. And so I started in that global e-commerce team, and it was a really, really incredible experience, like through and through, that I'm so thankful for to this day.
Is that what they wanted you to do originally? Because so you were hired before the pandemic or right at the pandemic?
Yeah, the team was actually built pre-pandemic to do this. And the idea is that, yes, we know e-commerce and grocery is going to continue to expand 6%, 7%, 8%. So the team was formed, and these roles were formed before the pandemic actually happened.
Wow.
Right. And so basically when we were put into this role, everyone started, we all of a sudden became like the kind of SWAT team across the organization that you'd call when your brand was having problems with whatever, or this retailer wanted to know, how do we do X, Y, and Z? We were the kind of internal consultancy that went and helped different teams do those types of things. And I think the importance of that role, it got blended into a much larger organization eventually, obviously, because now today, most CPGs are doing 17 to 20% grocery online pretty consistently right now. So yeah, it was a really interesting evolution.
Wow. That's very interesting that like just the timing of all of that. And had the pandemic not happen, you might not have had that such,
100%.
like it would,
Right place, right time.
yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world.
And then a few years later, AI comes along, and
Yeah.
now your role, there's another shift while you're at
Completely
General Mills,
shifted.
right?
Yes,
Yeah. So
exactly.
tell
And
us more about that.
yeah. And so, being in digital marketing and kind of in e-commerce, were always tagged as being the one who kind of understood what was coming and what to do about it. Right. You all have been in social roles before, and you're always kind of the one trying to figure out, how do we take advantage of whatever new platform, new technology as a marketer. And AI came about, really halfway through my tenure at Mills. And I remember like bringing my laptop to my boss when the GPT 3.5 came out. And I'm like, look at this. And whether they realized how incredible it was or how excited I was about it, doesn't really matter. But from then on, that was really my role, is to say, okay, this is all great. We've done e-commerce, we've done traditional marketing, we've done a little bit of media, we did D2C, we did all this, but now this is the new chapter. And how do we lead that within a massive organization, right? And where do we bring it in? Where do we invest? How do we integrate it? What are the first kind of areas that we focus on specifically for marketing at Mills? How do we bring AI into that in an effective way? And so that, for the last 2-3 years of my tenure there, that was really my focus. And I did that specifically for the marketing and then sales and kind of e-commerce organizations, both here in the United States and then also through some of our global partners as well.
So your role at General Mills changed completely, or you just,
Yeah, we had a few different chapters in my title there, but as the teams morphed, et cetera, came into more of a capabilities role. Again, a more subset of the kind of general consulting side. And in that capabilities role, my job was to make sure our marketers, our sales teams, and our online e-commerce teams had the best tools available. During that time, AI was the thing. And so as that kind of specialty came to life, that became my role, is to ensure
Yeah.
that we were leading appropriately with this new technology.
And that's really what enterprise organizations need to be doing, is they've got to give someone that responsibility to take the time to not be distracted with the day to day and focus on innovation and how to implement AI best practices. And the companies that aren't taking the time to carve that role out are the ones that are going to be playing catch up. So, I mean, the fact that
100%.
you got paid to do that was
Dream
amazing,
job.
right?
Dream job.
So
100%.
yeah, me on the other hand, I had to carve out time from my day to day to like learn this stuff. And
Totally.
and I wanted to, and I just it was clicking with like this, hidden software dev type person that was in me that I never knew about. And it was all starting to click. And I would have loved to gotten paid for all that time I put in.
Yes.
But I'm hoping, in the end here, it is, because I do spend a lot of time doing things for my clients and helping them understand it. and I just have so much respect for Callan Faulkner and the Uncommon Business, because I think, I totally can relate to what she went through when she realized what was happening,
Yes,
and the fact that she quit everything to go all in on AI, and it's paid off in dividends. And she's just like, her webinars, the marketing funnel that goes along with the training and everything about it is just phenomenal. Like,
it's
she's
incredible.
yeah, yeah. So I'd love to, you've been there, I don't know how long, but let's hear more about that transition and
Totally.
what's going on there.
Yeah, and so honestly, I can thank Callan for almost everything that is in front of me right now, and she's just an incredible leader who I was lucky enough to meet about a year ago now. And to your point, General Mills was a dream job. I got paid a really great corporate salary to play with AI all day, talk to really smart people, and represent the best brands in the world. Like, why would you ever change that? But I got introduced to Callan. It was actually Thanksgiving break of 2024. And it was a best friend of mine, and serendipity, Callan's best friend actually knew me through Mills, and they introduced us on the exact same day, which I'm like, all right, this is something, right? And we just jumped on a Zoom call. I can remember exactly where I was when I jumped on, and I just explained to her, I was like, this is kind of what I do. Here's what drives me forward. Here's what I like and what I don't like. And she's like, well, can you just help us out a little bit, right? And I'm like, I would be honored, right? And so nights and weekends really were the focus. I was helping Callan and her small but growing team in any way they needed. And I'm talking anything. I told her, I'm like, you throw whatever you want at me and I will take it. And of course they were so generous. They were paying me for my time. Everything was good. But Thursday nights after the kids went to bed, I was working on the Uncommon Business while doing my normal day job at Mills. And, doing stuff like building out their Notion ecosystem. I was building prompts. I was doing video tutorials. I was building AI systems for small business. I was helping with curriculum. And I look back and audited what lit me up throughout the day. I realized that my time in the corporate side of things, though great and though paid me well, and though I got to work with the smartest people in the world, what I was driving me was the Thursday late nights. What was driving me was able to being on classes and teaching others with Callan to get that stuff done. And so, yes, after a ton of reflection, obviously a ton of mentor feedback and just the incredible support Callan and Kinsey and the team gave me, I jumped ship. I turned in my 2-week notice basically in July 15th after I got back from 4th of July of this last year. And I am now, I think, 100 days in to the Uncommon Business, and it is an absolute rocket ship. And I have not looked back and have loved this more than I've ever loved any other job.
Well, we should
Yeah,
be surprised because, I love, this is why I love stepping back and because somebody who quits, agency life to go flip burgers in Australia, that's in you, and you want it, it's obvious that you're more of an adventurer and you're seeking that adventure. So it's really, really cool that you are just, so many people are afraid to follow their passions and afraid to take that big leap of faith. So kudos to you for doing that. Can we take a
Thank
step
you.
back just a second for our
Yeah.
listeners? Who is Callan? And, like,
Yeah.
and how did the business
And
start?
what is the Uncommon Business? Yeah, that's a great question. So Callan has an incredible story, and if anyone's followed her online, you know this story pretty well. She is one of the best salespeople that I've ever met. She, was in software sales and ended up getting laid off during the pandemic and started just building companies. Like, instead of going to search for a new job, she just knew people wanted what she had. She was incredibly smart, and she just started building companies. And she worked in land investing she just went all over the place and built really successful small companies. And then she had her ChatGPT moment similar to all of us had, where she finally saw this demo, saw the potential. And as John mentioned, she said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on AI training for the clients that I've kind of amassed through these companies. And that was in late 2023, early 2024. And so what the Uncommon Business was then born. And what that is the Uncommon Business, we are, focused on AI, creating AI native companies. We focus on small to mid-sized companies. Well, not even anymore. When you look at the cohorts, we have everyone from the biggest Fortune 100 companies all the way down to solopreneurs. But we run multiple programs, but the one we're known for the most is our 12-week Automate to Accelerate course. It's a 12-week intensive where business owners come in and they go through the basics of AI, and then we give them and we build with them tools to actually implement into their business in a way that I've never seen taught before. And then just to kind of catch up on the growth story, obviously thanks to all the hard work of Callan and then Kinsey, who runs all our marketing now, that first cohort, she had 50 people in it. And that was her kind of running it. And she tells some fun stories around not knowing what that is. And we went from 50 to the next one was 100. The next one was 250. And we just launched our 12-week course now with 600 people in the class, all run by a team of about 5 of us, which is just this story that we were so freaking proud of. And I'm just lucky enough that I get to be a part of it. So that's a little bit about the Uncommon Business.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun.
And I've sat in on a couple of those. I mean, the webinars, the training, the curriculum, everything that they've put together is top notch. So again, this isn't sponsored by anybody.
Not a sponsored setup, but
definitely
check us out.
We're going to put some links in the notes for sure. You're one of the smartest people I know in terms of AI. We've sat down, you've showed me some things that you've built, extremely impressive. I don't know if you can talk about anything in particular that, gets you really excited, some automation, some workflow, some agent that you've built. I'd love to hear a highlight or two about some of the stuff that you've put out there.
Yeah. Well, what's super cool is part of the Uncommon Business, we never teach what we don't implement ourselves in the business, right? And so being a part of a true AI native company, the ability for us to have, a revenue per head that's basically something that can't be touched by anyone is just super exciting. And that is thanks to some of the more unshiny objects that are happening behind the scenes, right? We have systems that are automated, that are running our curriculum, our student feedback, our customer success, our sales engines are all managed by different AI systems that help us just do the best we can at a scale that wouldn't be touched. But when I think about, some of the demos I showed and some of the things that are more, public facing, right? I think about some of the demos, John, that I showed you. And one of my favorite things that we do is we build basically an AI agent that owns and runs your brand. And it's not just your brand, but you look at your top social posts, you look at your top best email open rates, you look at competitors and what they're doing well, you look at gaps, and you bring that all together into an incredible AI system that we call the Brand Guardian. And the Brand Guardian system now is being implemented in thousands of businesses really across the globe at this point in time. And what it does is allows marketers to build everything from landing pages, lead funnels, email marketing, social posts, etc., in a way that has never really been done before. Not only at speed, right, where we see now marketing teams of 1 or 2 be able to have the output of 10 or 15, but also the quality, because all of a sudden now everything you do is rooted in your strategy. It's rooted in your brand voice. It's rooted in the magic of the founder, the leader, whatever brand you're representing. And that is one of our favorite products that we build with our students and implement. And we have like 4 of them that kind of run behind the scenes for us, depending on the audience and depending on the voice that we're building. But that is one of the most incredible things. And the one final thing I'll say, John and Danielle, is this is not something that's technical, right? This is something that we build with everyone of all skill levels. I don't care if you're an engineer. We've had engineers and really, incredible tech leaders go through our program. We've had people where they bought a new laptop just for the class and they come through and build the Brand Guardian with us. And that's just the magic. We teach them how to fish. We teach them how to build these things. And when they go back in their business, they think the Brand Guardian's cool, but they find 10 other problems in their business that they can now solve with tools like it. And so that's a little bit of a soapbox, but it's one thing that really gets me excited. Our curriculum goes through almost every department that a founder, a leader, or entrepreneur has to work with. And even if you're a part of a Fortune 100 company, you work with all of these. So the program goes through marketing, sales, customer success, operations, and then finance. And everyone goes through every single one of those because everyone as a leader position, anyone in a job, as you guys know all too well, somehow touches all 5 of those categories, right? And we think that it's really important for leaders of tomorrow to see all of that and to understand how do you solve problems within the business in each one of those departments using AI. And I think the biggest thing is that you're not going out and buying a bunch of fancy tools. It's not that. You're learning how to be a really good communicator. You're learning how to manage the right information to fuel these systems. And most of our team and most of our businesses still stay under $100 a month for annual subscriptions. They are not buying these enterprise tools and they're still seeing these results, which is absolutely incredible.
That's amazing. Are you a marketer now or are you an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So, the business is small, that's growing so fast, everyone wears every hat. But, John, you had mentioned the funnel, the landing page, the sales page. I can take almost zero credit for that because when I joined the Uncommon Business, I joined, honestly, probably one of the smartest marketers I've ever met. Her name's Kinsey. She works remotely and just has this incredible story. I will not do it justice. But this was really foreign to me. I had worked in big corporation marketing, big agency for big brands, those types of things. And, very standard, big media budgets, optimizing a little bit here or there, how much creative can you pump out to fuel those budgets, all that stuff, right? And when I came in Uncommon Business, it was the first experience I had where you have such a clear funnel. You have such a clear customer journey. You are building the sales page, the landing page for pure optimization and conversion. We know how much we spend every lead. We know how much we're spending in ads, and we are tuning that. And we, Kinsey and team, are tuning that to perfection. John, you've been through the funnel. You know how it goes. But I've just never seen marketing work so hard and so effectively than I see now. And it's just a testament to that marketing team.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that said, you're helping these companies transform. You're helping these companies transform, recognize the opportunity that AI has to help create all kinds of efficiencies. I don't know if were you at the Applied AI conference on
I
Monday?
wasn't. I know of it. I know about it, but I was not at the conference. How was it, John?
It was great. It was great. But, it got really philosophical, right? There was a lot of talk about, is AI going to take my job? What's happening at these companies? There's all these layoffs going on. What role did AI play in all these layoffs that are happening even here locally? And not only that, but there was more talk about what's the future of education? What's going to happen with our kids? How are they going to learn? What's this AI generation look like? So it was good. It was interesting from that perspective. So really good takeaways. And I've been posting a little bit on LinkedIn here and there, but that's something I'd love to get your take on. Being a dad, you got 3 boys you're trying to raise. AI is probably a good part of their lives right now. These kids are used to just talking to Siri and Alexa to get whatever they need. How are you managing that in your household to help make sure that your kids and younger generations in general, how do we keep them from not relying on AI to do the thinking for them?
Yeah, that's a big question. And my kids are pretty young, but it doesn't mean I don't think about it. I think about this all the time, especially with my job. I'll tell a quick story. When I was turning in kind of my notice right at Mills, and I was telling kind of my coworkers and everything, I had one of my mentors, so a woman I look up to there at Mills who's still there, and I told her, and she looked at me and she goes, "Please ensure you still teach kids how to think." And she was so passionate about it. And I'll remember that forever.
Yeah.
And it was something that really made me pause and said, like let's think about this a little bit. And yes, we are an adult education course. We do not teach kids, but it still is something that we have to think about as we're kind of leading the charge in this. And one of the things that I keep coming back to is the systems that we build with AI would be nothing without the founders behind it, right? The systems we're building with AI would be nothing without the genius. And we kind of talk a little bit about auditing as a professional, right? Auditing your day a little bit. How much of your day is actually in the zone of genius that you built your company for? How much of your day is actually focused on the zone of genius that you were hired for, right? And I think in corporations right now, never has that been so far off, right? I remember working at Mills, and it's like most of your day is in meetings that don't really matter that much, doing expense reports, doing corporate trainings. And it just was the amount of time that you actually focused on what you were best on was so small. And I think though that companies that really embrace AI allow themselves and allow their employees to focus so much more on what they are the best at, the reason they got the job in the first place, the reason that they built that company in the first place. And I think that it's been really enlightening to see that it not only allows that to flourish, but without that, these AI systems would be nothing, right? And so I think, for me, when I think about my kids, communication skills are the most important thing right now in the AI world. Whether you're talking to AI or not, having good communication skills is not going to be something that is going to go away. We need incredible communication skills. We need incredible experiences so that we can tune and drive AI in a way that's going to serve us. That's going to 3, 4, 5x our output in the zone of genius. But I do think it will have a little bit of a shift on what happens. To just continue to go on this diatribe, I think, general CLA education has never been more important or more powerful. Right? The idea of general education, learning to communicate, work as a team, problem solve is still one of the most incredible things that can never lose. And AI allows us to take that knowledge and scale it in whatever category we want. And those are the kids, those are the people who are going to be incredibly powerful.
The zone of genius. I love that.
I encourage you all, think about your zone of genius. Why are you sitting here? Like, what was the reason you took that job? Why did you get hired, right? And it probably sure was not because you're great at taking meeting notes or doing your expense report or filling out 17 PowerPoint documents a day, right? And so how does AI amplify that, right? And yes, there are going to be massive job implications there, right? When you can have an employee who's freaking smart do 4x more work, you're not going to need to hire 4 more people. Like, that's just the reality of it. We see so many businesses right now scaling 3, 4, 5x and not hiring a single person. Now, that's the doom and gloom of it, because you are able to just get so much out of people and in your zone of genius all day. But I also think the silver lining of that is that, we're never going to have a better renaissance for entrepreneurship. We're never going to never have the barriers been lower to go do what you want to do, because this is something that now empowers you to get that done.
Wow.
Love it. Yeah, that's great.
The future is
Yeah.
bright. I like that perspective of focusing on the thing that you bring to the table that nobody else can do, or that you do the best, and then using AI to empower you. I mean, John and I have had lots of conversations about AI. I think there are things that we should be concerned about the use of AI.
Sure.
That's, that skepticism is a good thing, I think, to ensure
Yeah,
that we
definitely.
are using it to be more of an empowerment and use it for good. When we look at, other tools that have come to our homes, like washing machine and things like that, we used to have to do those things. And now we have this automated tool that can help us so that we have time to focus on these other things or relax or whatever. If we're using AI like that, I think there's good things that can come out of it. If we're using AI as a therapy session or, for things that are not very positive, we might not get a great result. And I think that's why there's some concern with it. I like that though, the zone of genius. Everybody should take that away and really think about that. And I think that's really great thing to teach your children too, of like, what is your zone of genius? Because so many people just come out of high school and college, like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know my purpose. And so they flounder a little bit. And that's interesting.
Yeah. And I've heard a similar approach where, AI is basically just it's making a slightly better version of yourself, right? It's taking your foundational knowledge, your expertise, and it's just elevating it a little bit more. But yeah, the zone of genius and the communication skills, the critical thinking, the learning how to um, evaluate and do your own research, understand the sources, develop your own opinions. So those are the things that we just have to make sure that our kids and the next generations to come never lose sight of, and we'll probably be okay.
100%.
So I think you hinted at it earlier in terms of someone that you might want to recognize or lift up as a marketer that's maybe doing a lot of great work right now, but not necessarily getting a lot of credit. Do you want to talk more about that person?
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about that person. I would like to think she's getting credit for it. She works on our team. She's one of our kind of marketing specialists who, in a startup, does everything and anything. Her name's Alexis Fry. And Alexis came into our organization at the beginning of our launch, right? Every year we go through this launch period. And she came in coming from a unique background and got thrown into the mix of a startup that was really, really challenging, right? And as you know, in a startup, you do every job that's in front of you and you do not look away, right? And over the really kind of 6-week launch period, Alexis was able to not only take her zone of genius, the way she does marketing, the way she brings things to life creatively, but she also did everything else and allowed us to launch in such a successful way. And so I wanted to highlight her as a young and upcoming marketer here in the Twin Cities. And no one can have her because we love her and she's not going anywhere. But Alexis is one of my people I'd like to highlight as just someone who truly goes above and beyond and took really the bull by the horns and allowed us to have a launch that we will never forget. We love it, Alexis, and you do such a great work.
Yeah, thanks for lifting her up. That's awesome.
I think I would just like to know, how can we stay in touch, and how can our listeners follow you? Where should they go? What's the website for Uncommon? And
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the website's theuncommonbusiness.co.co, and you can see kind of all the offers, everything we offer there, and get a little bit know about our story and kind of the other people in the business. And it's a great place to go just to learn a little bit about how we bring this to life in a really unique way. And I do believe it is truly unique. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to do it. And you can search for Carter Jensen, and you're going to find me. It's I'm sitting there at the top of the list. There's not a ton of Carters.
Carter Jensen, because there's a baseball player. So it's
Yes. A baseball player who tried to buy my Instagram handle, by the way, and the offer was not close to anything that I wanted to entertain. So I still own that Instagram handle. But yes, there is a baseball player, and I get Google updates about him every day. So I feel like I'm his biggest fan. But, so you can find me on LinkedIn. And then, of course, at The Uncommon Business, you can learn more about Callan's founder story, learn about what we're building, and would love to have you guys come to an upcoming bootcamp session. We do live sessions that are free all the time. I think our next one is just here in a couple of weeks. And so if you want to just get a little taste of what this is, I would love to have you come. I know, John, you've been to a couple, and we do them all the time. So sign up for our email list. You'll get an event notification and come hang out for an hour or two and just see what we're all about and see what you can learn about AI. We give a ton away during those sessions, and they're always a ton of fun.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. This was so fun. And I really can't wait to see. I feel like there's going to be another Australia flipping burgers moment at some point.
Well,
still young.
We get a lot in front of us right now, and I'm loving every bit of it. But guys, thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun to hash out even my early 20s career path. I haven't done that in a while, and it was just an honor to be able to talk to two leaders like yourself who are doing such incredible things and be able to talk a little bit about me and what drives me every day. So thank you both. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carter, for joining the show today. Thanks for joining the LiftKit Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, John Hoeft, founder of LiftKit Marketing, a consultancy dedicated to supporting agencies and marketers with their digital growth strategies.
And I'm Danielle Schermerhorn, a former agency owner and current e-commerce specialist with deep experience across both brand and agency sides of the marketing world.
Each week, we'll bring you conversations with marketing professionals who are doing great work, whether they're leading teams, building campaigns, launching products, or just figuring it out behind the scenes.
Our guests will share their personal journeys, the real stories behind their success, the challenges they've faced, and the wins they're most proud of. We'll also hear what's next for them and what they see on the horizon for the industry.
At LiftKit Marketing, we believe in celebrating people, recognizing great work, and lifting up those who are making an impact. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.